Fake HOA cops ticketed an EMT's rig. Karma came calling. Maple Grove is the kind of neighborhood where every house looks like it belongs in a magazine. Perfect lawns, matching mailboxes, and not a single weed in sight. But don't let the polish fool you. Behind the picket fences, it's a pressure cooker. And the man turning up the heat is Gary Henshaw, self-appointed king of the Maple Grove Homeowners Association. I'm Mia Carter, a 28-year-old EMT. I've lived here for 2 years, renting a small duplex while I save up for a place of my own. I'm not one for drama, but Gary's made it impossible to stay out of it. Gary's a retired car salesman with a beer gut and a Napoleon complex. He runs the HOA like it's his personal fiefdom, complete with a posse of wannabe HOA cops. A group of busybodies who patrol in a pickup truck plastered with Maple Grove Patrol decals. They're not real cops, but they act like they've got badges, handing out fines for everything. A basketball hoop left out overnight, a car parked an inch over the line, even a kid's chalk drawing on the sidewalk. Gary's got this grin when he hands you a fine, like he's doing you a favor by ruining your day. Most folks grumble, but pay up. Nobody wants to be the one he targets next. Me? I keep my head down. My job's intense, 12-hour shifts, racing to heart attacks, car wrecks, and overdoses. When I'm home, I just want to crash, not deal with Gary's nonsense. But last month, he crossed a line that turned my quiet life into a war zone. It was a Tuesday mid-afternoon, and I was on call, parked outside Mrs. Delaney's house. She's 82, lives alone, and had called 911 after a bad fall. My partner Sam and I were stabilizing her for transport when I noticed a yellow slip flapping under my ambulance's wiper. A ticket from Gary's crew, citing unauthorized parking in a residential zone. My blood boiled. I was saving a life, and these clowns were playing parking cop. I tore the ticket off, ready to shove it in Gary's face. But Sam stopped me. "Focus on Mrs. Delaney," he said. "This can wait." He was right. But as we loaded her into the rig, I saw Gary across the street, leaning against his truck, smirking. That's when I knew this wasn't just a ticket. It was personal, and I wasn't about to let Gary Henshaw, a man who'd never lifted a finger for anyone, disrespect the work I do. Maple Grove was about to learn what happens when you mess with an EMT. After Gary's goons ticketed my ambulance, I was fuming. But I had a job to do. Mrs. Delaney was stable by the time we got her to the hospital, but that yellow slip burned a hole in my pocket. I couldn't stop picturing Gary's smirk, like he'd won some twisted power game. I wanted to storm his oversized colonial and tear into him. But I knew better. Gary thrived on confrontation. It fueled his ego. If I was going to take him down, I needed to be smart. So I started digging. I posted about the ticket on the Maple Grove Facebook group, expecting a few sympathetic comments. Instead, the post blew up. Neighbors flooded the thread with their own Gary horror stories. Sarah, a mom of 2, got fined $200 for her kid's lemonade stand because it violated commercial activity rules. Mr. Newton, a retired teacher, was hit with a $150 penalty for a non-compliant birdhouse. Even Quiet Lisa, who never spoke up, shared how Gary's crew towed her car for parking in her own driveway during a street sweeping that never happened. The pattern was clear. Gary and his fake HOA cops weren't just enforcing rules. They were bullying everyone. And the ambulance ticket was the last straw. The outrage spread like wildfire. People started calling Gary's patrol a shakedown squad. And someone leaked a photo of his truck, complete with those ridiculous Maple Grove Patrol decals, parked in a handicapped spot at the grocery store. I wasn't surprised. Gary's the kind of guy who'd bend any rule to suit himself. But I was shocked by how fast the neighborhood turned. People who'd quietly paid fines for years were done. They wanted blood, or at least Gary's resignation. I felt the same, but I needed answers. Why was he so obsessed with control? And why target my rig? I started asking around discreetly. Mrs. Delaney, recovering at home, told me Gary had always been a bully, but he'd gotten worse after his car dealership went bust 2 years ago. He's got no job now, just the HOA, she said, her voice weak but sharp. It's all he's got left. That explained his ego, but not the ticket. Then I talked to Jamal, a firefighter who lived on my street. He'd had his own run-in with Gary's crew. They ticketed his truck during a call last year, claiming it blocked access. Jamal laughed it off at the time, but he mentioned something odd. Gary had bragged about having connections in emergency services, like he was some big shot. That stuck with me. What kind of connections? I decided to confront Gary, not with fists, but with questions. I found him at the HOA office, a converted garage behind his house, sipping coffee and flipping through a stack of fine notices like they were poker chips. His patrol buddies, a couple of middle-aged guys with walkie-talkies, lounged nearby. "Mia," he said, grinning like a shark. "Come to pay your ticket." I held up the yellow slip. "You ticketed an ambulance while I was saving Mrs. Delaney's life." His grin didn't budge. "Rules are rules," he said. "Your rig was in a no-parking zone. Safety first." I wanted to scream. Safety? This man didn't know the meaning of the word. I pressed him, asking why he targeted emergency vehicles, but he just shrugged. "Maybe you should park better next time." His buddy snickered, and I left before I lost it. But I wasn't done. I was going to find out what made Gary tick. That's when the shock hit. Late that night, I got a text from Sarah, the lemonade stand mom. She'd been digging online and found an old news article from Gary's hometown, buried in a local paper's archive. The headline made my stomach drop. "Local man fined for posing as paramedic and scam." The article from 5 years ago detailed how Gary had faked EMT credentials to scam elderly clients, charging them for fake home health checks before his dealership days. He'd been caught, fined $10,000, and banned from any medical work. The article included a grainy photo of a younger Gary, smirking in a knockoff paramedic uniform. It was him, no doubt. I sat there stunned. Gary wasn't just a bully. He was a fraud who'd preyed on vulnerable people, pretending to be one of us. And now he was targeting real first responders, like me and Jamal. Maybe out of spite. Maybe to feel big again. The ticket wasn't random. It was personal. He hated what we stood for, the honor of saving lives, because he'd never had it. My anger boiled over, but so did my resolve. Gary wasn't just going to lose his HOA crown. He was going to face the neighborhood he terrorized. I shared the article in the Facebook group, and the reaction was explosive. Comments poured in. "This guy's a con artist. He's been fleecing us for years. Time to shut him down." People started planning a protest at the next HOA meeting set for Saturday. Sarah and Jamal volunteered to help me gather more evidence. Financial records, fake tickets, anything to prove Gary's patrol was a racket. We weren't just fighting for me or Mrs. Delaney anymore. This was about every neighbor he'd find, every kid he'd scared, every life he'd disrespected. It was about honor, Mine, Jamal's, and the community's. But I knew Gary wouldn't go quietly. He'd built his little empire on fear, and he'd fight to keep it. As I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I thought about Mrs. Delaney's frail hand, gripping mine, thanking me for saving her. I thought about Jamal risking his life every day, and Sarah fighting for her kids. Gary didn't get to win this. Not on my watch. The HOA meeting was going to be a reckoning, and I was ready to bring the house down.